everybody, I am SigTrent, game designer, co-creator of Everyday Heroes and turbo typist for SigTrent Games. Today I'm going to be updating you on what's going on with SigTrent Games, offer a little bit of game design advice, and talk about my life and gaming in general. This is week 33 of SigTrent Games, so let's go over what happened this week. Well, in Shotgun Fantasy, I did run short of my writing goal. We'll talk about why a little bit later. Did get some work done, almost finished with magic items. I'm doing the general and worn items right now. Just trying to figure out kind of how I can get the most bang for my buck with the effects that I'm going to be offering as different things that you can put on these kinds of items. I want to make sure that basically each one of these can be used for as many different kinds of items as possible so that you can really create a lot of different kinds of things. All the classical items that you might find in a typical fantasy game, plus some other interesting little tidbits. I always got to have something that's a little bit unique and interesting in there. So I'm working on that. It's coming along okay. I just didn't get to spend as much time on it as I might otherwise like. We did wrap up what is basically probably going to be the last playtest session for Shotgun Fantasy. It went really nicely. It was very smooth. Just felt like a good game of Dungeons & Dragons or any other fantasy role-playing game. All the mechanics just kind of ticked along. The spellcasting worked great. Combat was great. The use of Aurasight and everything was really a very cool way to investigate magical effects. Although I did set up the adventure to kind of make that part of the plot line. So that was all really cool. Super happy with everything. I'm just want to get it all wrapped up and into your hands. Pretty sure we're going to finish it up here before the winter this year. So I'm very excited about that. Why have I not gotten so much written on it? Well, mostly because I was working on my new contract, which I'm not going to give the details just yet, but we're working on it. Really enjoying working with my new colleagues. It's been a lot of fun. Now that I'm kind of into the weeds on it, I had a lot more questions and interacting with the other authors who are working on that. And I love collaborative work. It's one of the only things that I don't love about doing SigTrent Games is I don't have really like design people to bounce ideas off of and go back and forth or to offer my ideas to help them out. I like that process a lot. It's just kind of me churning along. Now, I have my lovely wife, Anne. I always bounce ideas off of her, so that helps quite a bit. But, it's we think alike a lot of the time. And so it's nice to have some people who have totally different perspectives from me to do that kind of stuff with. So I've enjoyed that quite a bit. The writing itself is going well. It is easier work to do than Shotgun Fantasy. Right now, especially, I'm just kind of hitting the low-hanging fruit in the outline that I've been given. Working along, writing up blurbs, explanations, and descriptions of things that I'm very well familiar with, just due to my expertise in my life outside of gaming, actually. It was helpful for this book. And so there's a lot of stuff that I just know how to pound out and talk about. So I got quite a lot of words written on that, met my word goal pretty easily there. But it did eat up a little bit of the time that I wanted to work on Shotgun Fantasy and Night Magics. Night Magics is really kind of a bonus task. I am going to switch gears here. I'm going to work on those the next couple of days, try to make some good progress. And then we'll go back to working on that project. So it's nice to have things I can switch back and forth. I do like that, but it is a big expansion of the number of words I need to write every week. And so it's a personal challenge for me to try and keep up with all that. I'm hoping to get Shotgun Fantasy wrapped up, and then I can focus entirely on that project and getting Night Magics. Once I start working on Night Magics in earnest, it's going to go really fast because a lot of the content from Shotgun Fantasy is just going to pop on over there, get remodeled just a little bit, and some new classes put together, and then a bunch of spells kind of rewritten in my new spell format. So that's what's going on over there. Should be pretty cool. Good stuff to look forward to. Please do keep an eye out. As soon as Shotgun Fantasy gets like draft complete, I'm going to start kind of media blitzing and stuff as we put the actual package together. And I'm excited about that. So soon you will hear from me endlessly and maybe a little too much, but that's okay. That's what you got to do when you're promoting products. All right, game design tip of the week this week is about fun combats. So I did a couple combats in my last play session and my first play session. It's one of the things that the playtesters really seem to enjoy. They were excited about the moments that happen in combat. Of course, a large part of that is due to them being great players and creating cool moments for me to riff off of and to elaborate and interact with. It's such a lovely dance role-playing between the players and the game master. Everybody's creative energies coming together. The group of people that I'm playing with live are just great. They're really old school players. They've been around the block, so they kind of know how to do, right? And we just had a great time interacting with each other. I think it's been a lot of fun. All right, so here are some tips for fun combats. This is both a mix of tips for game masters and tips for game designers. I would say that game designers have a little less to do with fun combats than game masters do. There's definitely some work in setting up the combats that is important if you're writing an adventure. But a lot of it really comes down to the game master's ability to frame and describe the action that's going on. All right. So let's go with number one, and then there'll be a bunch of subpoints here. So it's important to remember that combat is a dramatic and comedic story, right? So a combat isn't just game mechanics. It's also a story that expands from those game mechanics, kind of comes from the interplay of hits and misses and damage rolls and saving throws and all the other things that happen, because those things are part of the drama. That's why we enjoy combat in a sense, because it's a dramatic situation. It's life and death a lot of the time. It's kind of when the rubber meets the road and big things can happen. Big story changes can occur during a combat situation. So it's important that you play that up, and it also can be hilarious sometimes because really ridiculous things happen and wild circumstances that you wouldn't expect. 20s and ones getting rolled at the right moment creates for wonderful inspiration for storytelling. So always remember that. So here's some things that you can do to try and make sure your combat is a dramatic story. One, set the stage with enemies that have motivations, right? So you want to know, what is this gnoll thinking? Because if you understand what your gnoll is thinking, then he might be incredibly aggressive and like going after one particular enemy because he just hates them. Or maybe he really wants to live. He's a bit of a craven coward, so he hides behind the trees and he takes pot shots and runs away a lot. Or maybe they just really want money, and so like if he can get his hand on the player's gold and then run away, then he's got his gold. He's very brave when he's getting it and very cowardly once he's got it, right? So think about what the motivations of your NPCs are. Portray that in combat as you are playing. Not every mook and goon needs to have like a deep motivation, but definitely if you have a main bad guy, leader types, or just, if the dice rolls come out a certain way and you go, okay, well, this guy is just inept in combat, but is completely brave. And so that could be a fun moment to play up. So really just keep an eye on those motivations and play those NPCs like they were player characters in your head whenever possible. And it's going to be a lot more exciting. Choose an environment that offers strategic challenges. So, an ambush in a cliffside is a really good case. I think there's one in Escape from New York where the players are being led by this hippie gang member. What he says is a secret path to get to where they need to go, but is actually leading them into an ambush in a, urban canyon where there are bad guys up on top of the roofs, and then he locks the door, so they're trapped in this alleyway. It's a good ambush situation. You've got a challenge because the players are down there. Now, they might have guns and can shoot back up at the other people, but it's really easy to duck back behind a building. So the hippies have good cover in this situation. So how do you get up onto the roof, or how do you attack people up there? Just creates an interesting strategic challenge. Another typical one, I think, which I didn't write, was from To Dethrone a Dictator. And it's kind of like a Normandy invasion scene where you got the characters coming in out of a landing craft and they have to get up the beach, but there are bunkers up on the beach or just in entrenched position, guys with machine guns. It's a super difficult situation as you're slogging through the difficult terrain to try and get to them. They're taking pot shots. They've got cover. You've got no cover. It's bad times. It makes the combat a lot more challenging, and the players have to think of innovative ways in order to try and deal with this. Now, the way we try to set up Everyday Heroes characters, of course, is they have lots of resources and ways to deal with things. But still, creating that situation so that the people can find a way to overcome it really is going to make the story of that combat a lot more interesting to tell. Wow, we faced this terrible challenge, and here's how we overcame it, right? That leads into story. All right, make sure there are stakes to the combat. Now, obviously, there's life and death stakes a lot of the time to combat. That's kind of built into it. But it's also kind of good for the players to understand, like, if I defeat this enemy here, we're going to save the town over there. Or if I can break the back of this organization by taking out the head priest, then I'm going to have a lot easier time with everybody else. Whatever it is, try to kind of create a combat in which there are stakes just beyond surviving, right? Because that one's always there, and while it's probably the most important, still having other different things that are going to be on the outcome of that are good. And one of the ways to do that is to let players know, now that they've defeated, here's a consequence. So show the consequences of that thing. And in the little playtest that I ran, on the first half, some players defeated some hobgoblins They were on the road, and they reported this to the local authorities, and they collected goods, and they gave some of the merchant goods to another merchant that was traveling with them. And so when they returned, I made sure to let the players know that their stay at the inn was going to be free now, and drinks were on the house, because they become a little bit of local celebrities, right? And so there was an extra stakes to that combat that happened a little bit later that is going to tie back, and they go, oh, wasn't it cool that we defeated those guys, and now we're kind of local folk heroes, right? Have the NPCs react to what's happening in combat. So, like, if the players are doing great, then the NPC should be like, oh, no, we're losing badly, right? And they're scrambling around and they look worried. So I often describe, like, the look on the face, if they have faces, of an enemy, or the lack of. They were fighting a giant crab the other day, and of course the giant crab takes damage, doesn't really change the giant crab's behavior, so that's a case where it wouldn't react very much. But if they're going to be intelligent, or even animal NPCs that you're doing battle with, they're going to have body language and facial reactions, or maybe even speech, that's going to show that what the players are doing is having an effect on the NPCs psychologically, and that's going to help build the story naturally. Narrate the drama. So, just you take 4 points of damage. You can describe how they took 4 points of damage, or, just came too close, and so you're sweating it a little bit, or, oh yeah, that just nicked your skin. Whatever it happens to be that feels appropriate for the moment. Just be sure to describe what those numbers mean in terms of the story whenever that's happening. Now, sometimes in a really long combat, it might not matter so much, and everybody's kind of imagining it anyway, but I think it's a good idea to always just drop a little narration, not a big long story about every sword swing or anything like that, but just kind of the moments that matter when the dice are doing something that's changing the outcome. Then you want to give a little bit of description, or let the players give a little description. Keep everybody involved in the combat. Like, if you see somebody that's got nothing to do in the combat, try to have the NPCs get them involved, right? It's sort of like, summer camp or something. Oh, there's a kid in the corner who never wants to do anything, so let's do something that celebrates what he's interested in, or get him involved in some way. So that's important in combat as well. If somebody's just hiding in the back. Now, if they like being the sniper, my lovely dear wife loves being the sniper. She likes to be hidden and just take people out and not have the NPCs pay attention to her. That's the whole point of what she's doing. But that's not always the case. Some people just don't feel like they're very engaged, or their character's very useful. So try to create situations that they're going to be useful, and they can be part of the story, right? So those are my tips for making combat like a dramatic story. I got a lot to say on combats. Okay, so number 2, revel in victory, right? So this is really important. It's something I learned from other game masters that I played with, and I tend to be a little bit bad at this sometimes. But when the players win, praise the heroes, the characters, and like the awesome things that they did, and their players for being very clever in coming out on top in the situation, or being resilient, or whatever it is. It's just nice when you do a great job, when people pat you on the back a little bit. Don't be pandering or patronizing or whatever, but, just genuinely celebrate with the players their great victory. It's an awesome thing. Have the NPCs, again, react to losing, right? So if they're running away, or they're getting beat up, or, if they want to surrender or whatever, definitely have them be somewhat in awe, or fear, or whatever, or maybe even admiration of the player characters. And that's going to make the players feel pretty awesome. Offer a reward. I mean, that's what treasure's for, and other stuff. Not every combat needs a big pile of treasure at the end of it, but some of them do. And if you can, if the bad guys have a really cool magic item, or weapon, or armor, or something that they're using, then that's a great, reward that people are going to pick up. But also, like I said, the townspeople might be really appreciative. They bring them a fruit basket. Whatever it is that the townsfolk can do to appreciate the heroes, then they're probably going to do that. It's not golden treasure, but it's going to make people smile, and even if it's all imaginary, right? It's a good experience. Fantasy role-playing is about fantasy play, and everyone likes to be the hero and revel in their victory, right? So be sure to play that up. And remember that some fights should be easy. The last fight I put in my playtest was intentionally kind of an easy fight. It was a victory lap, last chance to do cool stuff with the character before we wrapped up playtesting. And so just had a bunch of bandits. They were really the most. They had lances on horseback, so they could do a lot of damage, but they never actually managed to hit anybody. So they only had like +3 to hit, and my dice were pretty lousy. So that's fine. It was intended to be an easy combat. They mopped up, and they had a good time with it. The orc warrior was leaping off their horse. I did a jumping clothesline to a mounted bandit. It was cool. Right? I made them work for these things, but they their characters are good at stuff. They did the stuff they were good at. Everybody had a great time. All right, next one. Also revel in the challenge, right? So to make that drama, you need some fights to be hard and scary. So start combat with some of the biggest threats. Like don't save the big attack for like late in the combat, usually, unless the characters are just doing really well and you want to turn things around on them, right? But normally I start with some big threats. Just like players what are you gonna cast first? Your fireball or your magic missile? Probably your fireball if you're concerned that this is a tough fight. NPCs should probably approach every fight as if it might be their last. Probably is. So have them run out with the big guns. Give the players something to fear. And I'm like, oh man, we better take this seriously. That was a lot of damage. So I definitely like to do that. Show concern for the heroes. Basically kind of funny, like, but when they go down, you're like, oh no. Like, be concerned as the game master in a way, because that's going to emphasize the fear and the danger that they're in. If you sense some danger, then they're going to feel some danger. Some fights should be difficult. I already kind of talked about that. Trust players to figure out solutions, right? So don't always try to tell the players how to beat the encounter unless they're really having a hard time. You can give them some hints, try to help them feel clever. But usually players will figure it out. So plan a pretty hard encounter. Sometimes I put together an encounter. I'm like, oh, this is a tough one. And players breeze through it because they come up with something really clever and it just works. And I'm like, oh, well, that's impressive. You totally divided them up and picked them off one at a time. Brilliant. I mean, that's the best way to do a fight is to never get hurt, right? So that's a big win. So yeah, trust them to figure those things out. Also, let the players find advantages. Like if they're going to take apart your bad guys and they earned it, let them take apart your bad guys. That's great. It's no problem. Just make it the next one a little tougher somehow to try to challenge them. Always keep an avenue of escape open is really important if you're going to do a really killer encounter that could TPK everybody, wipe out the party, which generally you don't want to do in certain situations. That might be okay, but 5e and Everyday Heroes generally bends against that kind of play. But have an avenue of escape. So if they're smart enough to realize they're getting their butts kicked, they can get out of that situation either by negotiating, surrendering, running away, whatever it is. Some kind of out that says you're losing this, but you're not going to lose your life. You'll be able to come back and fight another day. Okay. Keep up the pace. That's very important. Don't bog down in details. Don't look up rules while you're playing. That's usually terrible. You can do it. I have done it before, especially during playtesting. It's very different. But when you are trying to just play the game and enjoy it, try not to look up rules or spend time arguing over rules. Just make up a rule as a game master. Say, hey, roll this. If you get this, it works. If you roll that, it doesn't work. That's how D&D works, right? 5e. So just move on with things and keep playing. Don't take breaks during combat. Ideally, you're in the middle of a 4-round fight and everyone wants to take a bathroom break or eat lunch or something like that. It's not the best time for it. I mean, real life is more important than games. If you got to take a break, you got to take a break. But it's not the best time, right? Try to do it between combats, before or after. You check your pacing, so where you're at time-wise. Know your group and what kind of rest they need between excitement. Use retreat and call combats when it's clear the heroes have won. So this isn't so much for the players as for the game master. Most people don't want to fight to the death. Most creatures are not in it to win it in that kind of a way. It's not so do or die. There are situations where the creatures clearly are, and that makes for the most exciting combat in some ways. But it's more realistic, and instead of like mopping up the enemy when it's very obvious you're going to win, maybe the players are going to take 4 more points of damage or whatever, it doesn't matter. Just call it, right? And you can either narrate that the players mop up the remainder, no problem whatsoever, or let them narrate that mopping up operation, or just, the bad guys flee into the hills. It's not realistic that you catch them, especially with them horseback or something. We're out of combat, right? We're done. You guys won. Congratulations. So definitely take advantage of that. And that's to keep the pace going, remember. And but don't rush. Like, keep the pace up, but don't rush past cool moments and details in the combat. Somebody cast their big spell. Don't just, oh, great, 20 damage. All right, next. No, give it a little weight. Give it some description. Keep it going. Just don't have those lulls and pauses and dead time. That's what you're trying to avoid. If players It's not my notes. But if players are really stuck on their turn trying to decide something to do, that's a great time as the game master suggests something for them that would be helpful in the situation. And that player is usually going to be grateful because no one wants to be the person taking up everybody's time. Or, if a player does that all the time, then that's like a good time to have a conversation with that player and just say, hey, I don't know how you play normally, but, we end up kind of having to pause on your turn. So think about what you want to do a little bit ahead of time. Like, get your default thing and maybe something you'll do if the default thing isn't available. And that way, you can just go through and you don't have to spend too much time. Maybe they need a little help understanding their character and how it works. Maybe they need a little help understanding the gameplay and how that works. Whatever the case, try to help them out. That's the goal. Because nobody really wants to be that person, right, who's taking up all the time in the world. Well, almost nobody. There's always somebody, but All right, stuff to avoid. Locking down one player all combat. Nobody likes to just be tied up in a bundle for a whole combat and be the helpless prisoner. Doing it a little bit is exciting because it's kind of Jeopardy. But when somebody just spends their whole time that way, especially if they're not in any danger, they're just sort of like tied up in a web or something, and they can't act and they can't attack anybody, and they're just stuck. It's just really boring. Now, if they're in the mouth of a giant boa constrictor and they're struggling and people are hacking at it trying to free them, that's kind of exciting, right? So that's not so bad. But hopefully that's a temporary condition, right? Long, drawn-out slugfest. They've got 1 million hit points. You got 1 million hit points, and you're taking 6 damage back and forth. Super boring. Don't get into that. You'll end up having to describe the same sword swing 20 times. Nobody cares. It makes it boil down to a numbers game. There's no drama. So try to avoid those. Tanky monsters that are hard to hurt can be kind of good, but there needs to be some kind of ticking clock on this combat to say when it is over. And at some point, you're like, well, you're not going to lose. They're not going to win. They still got 40 hit points. Let's just wrap this up. You spend the next 5 minutes beating it down. You will take 5 damage, right? But you managed to slay the beast. It is out of its offensive choices, Whatever it happens to be, try to get that thing wrapped up and don't get into the giant slugfest to the last hit point. One-shot kills that are a surprise, I am not a fan of. Takes the drama against the player characters I'm talking about. Now, in some of, I played a lot of Everyday Heroes, just kind of dropping in other people's games to see how things are going. I've died a fair number of times, which always surprises people. They feel bad for killing the game designer. Going, no. I'm learning from this. Like, I'm learning the way the system works. Usually what happened is they were throwing a high-level monster at characters that were not ready to handle those, especially first-level characters, and it just too much damage and one-shotted me, right? And that's okay. It's not a terrible thing, but it's not usually what people are trying to achieve in those games. And one of them was nobody's fault because I was playing in like there were different tables doing different levels, and when you defeated like your table, you could go join somebody else's table. And I was at the first level table, and I went and joined the 7th level table, and of course, Game Master didn't ask what level I was, threw an attack at me, so maybe it's a little bit of fault. And just, annihilated me, did 3 times the hit points that I had or something. And he was like, well, wait, what? I'm like, oh yeah, I'm toast. Like I'm a bubbling pile of goo. And he's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm like, no, you don't need to be sorry. Like we're just playing at a convention. It's all fun. I'm the game designer, so I'm not here to have my heroic moment, right? I'm here to see everybody else play. But generally don't do that, right? It's just not fun for players, especially in a longer campaign. Untouchable opponents, like there's a trick to beat them, and the whole combat's about figuring out, I have to use rusty weapons to defeat the ancient golem. It's clever if you set it up beforehand where somebody gets to figure that out going into the combat or very quickly into the combat. That's great. If it takes a long time for people to figure it out, it's super boring. So I tend to avoid unkillable foes unless I set that up a long time ahead of time and people know that that's going to happen going into it. That used to be a thing you'd see a lot more often in old school Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm just not a fan of that setup. Heavy-handed dice fudging, don't do that. Like, have I been known to fudge a dice or two occasionally to keep somebody from dying or to keep a fight a little more exciting? Yes, but just very sparingly, because I recognize that dice roll at that moment is kind of a problem for the story I want to tell and the story of the combat and stuff, and so maybe I'll do that just a little bit. But generally, I don't recommend it. It's much better to manipulate your NPCs in some way, Like if I want to fight to end, maybe I'm just going to shave off some hit points from everybody. If I want to fight to go a little longer, maybe I'm going to slide them an extra 10 hit points so we get one more round of excitement out of it. Or just the way they behave. Have your NPCs be smarter if you need to put more pressure on the heroes, or have them be a little dumber if you want things to get a little bit easier. That's the best way to do it. It's not cheating at all. It's just being a smart game master and trying to keep your combat really thrilling, right? So that's how you handle that rather than just, ignoring the dice. Not a good way to go. All right, so I believe that is everything on my tips on how to make combat more exciting. All right, so what have I been playing this week? Stellaris, shockingly enough. I did play a little bit of Dungeons & Dragons Online. I'm trying to remember what I did, but I think I just played for an hour, so it kind of doesn't count. I did play some Stellaris. Muad'Dib, the leader of the Fremen people, had achieved genetic perfection. It's a fun game because it's sort of a role-playing game, and as much as it's a strategy game, and so I really enjoy it. And so I'm playing on a particular storyline about like a single incredible leader who leads their civilization into the stars. And there's lots of options for that single leader to die, but of course, why would you pick it if that's the options you're going to choose? I don't know, maybe just possesses you in the moment, how you want to tell a story of them overcoming the tyrant leader that they originally had. But in this case, Paul Muad'Dib, you can install them on a throne in the throne room, just like in Warhammer 40k. There's little nods to every type of science fiction inside of Stellaris, which is a lot of fun, picking out all the Easter eggs. But in this case, and it's funny, in my notes, I said Paul Muad'Dib for some reason, but Muad'Dib. Anyway, the Fremen are doing okay. They're kind of stagnating. They haven't really been able to be in a war. Everyone seems to like them, which was not my intent. But for whatever reason, my neighbors, there's a lot of spiritualist empires, and I'm a spiritualist empire, and so they all think I'm just the bee's knees, so nobody wants to fight me. And I'm currently set to where I'm a war of aggression just doesn't pursue my interests really well because I've built this big federation that I'm in charge of and everything. So I don't know. They're the Peace Fremen, which is completely non-canonical. But at any rate, having a good time with that. On Nomad Anne's Twitch channel, she's been playing Phasmophobia this week, which is not like her normal sort of cozy puzzle game genre vibe. But it is anniversary week. It's a 5-year anniversary since Phasmophobia was first made available to people as an open beta, and it is now a finished game, I would say. Or, well, actually, I don't know if they've announced that it's actually finished. But anyway, it's been around 5 years. It's fun to play. So she's been playing because you get extra bonus XP. So she really wants to maximize her Phasmophobia time right now. And if you want to check out how that game plays and watch Anne play it, yeah, by all means, check out Nomad Anne. I believe she's also playing it this week, although I am not 100% sure. And it's a fun game to watch people play, I would say. It's pretty interesting. It's low-key entertainment, but it's a cool game. It's about guessing what kind of ghost you're dealing with and figuring out how to collect evidence of the ghosts. I like it. I play probably every week. I did play this week with Anne as well. All right, life in general. Well, what's going on here outside of all that stuff? Alien Earth. I binged all but the last episode because it wasn't out yet of Alien Earth. And it was fantastic. I really loved it. The eyeball alien is amazing. The other aliens are very cool. Our classic aliens are there. The cyborg children are really neat. I guess they're not cyborgs. They're synth children. Cyborg bad guy. There's so many bad guys. I love bad guys. It's it's one of those shows where almost everybody's a bad guy in some way, shape, or form, or spends a little time as a bad guy. So I liked it a lot. Great show. Definitely recommend it. One of the best alien things. Aliens are awesome. This is right up there with those three, I would say, in my opinion. It doesn't have that super satisfying structure that like Aliens does as a movie, as a contained 2-hour experience, but as a longer drama that surprises you with cool developments and character growth and changes and big reveals, which is what you get out of a series, is top notch. Maybe the best world building and coolest details in any of the Alien things. So super fun. I like it a lot. Ear infection this week. Yeah, I don't like it a lot. I got it right now. I feel like I got my headphones on because I can't hear jack because my ears are full of medicine and they're all swollen up, and I am slightly miserable. Sunday I had to work all day at the gift shop, not being able to hear the customers very well, and working by myself, and that sucked quite a bit. I mean, I had acute myeloid leukemia for a couple of years, so it's nothing compared to that, right? It hasn't really affected my spirits particularly, other than I feel a little tired and just kind of in need of a rest. But yeah, that's ear infection. Hopefully, I got some medication to treat it, and usually takes about a week or so for it to go away. So I'm looking forward to that. Very high word counts this week. It's not exactly related to what I'm doing, but kind of like I did a lot of writing. I feel really good about that. I didn't quite actually meet all my goals because I set outrageously ambitious goals that were like 3 to 4 times as much writing as I've normally done, and I got to about 3 times as much writing as I normally do. So that's good. That's very good. But maybe it's a little too ambitious because it was hard, and I did feel a lot of pressure. And I like to kind of be cool and chill and just kind of cruise along at a good rate of productivity. So we'll see. But to make a living as a writer, you do have to have a pretty high output. So that's something I got to do. So anyway, feeling my way through that. So I hope all of you are feeling your way through life well. No ear infections, nothing terrible going on. Hopefully, if there are, I'm sorry. You have my sympathy. I hope you get better soon. And I hope everybody has a great week in gaming and in life. Bye-bye.